Cyprus, the counterintelligence podcast, hosted by IXN Solutions, the company you turn to for corporate counterintelligence expertise and creators of 351X.
And we're live. Ryan Rambo, good morning after these technical issues that you had to deal with again this morning.
Yeah, and it happened last night on another podcast. I was on the Break It Down podcast with Pete Turner, and everything was going good for the first 5 minutes, and then everything was not going well. And my microphone blew up, my headphones blew up. So I've gone to alternate comms. I hope my sound is coming through, and we can work through it. Jeremy, how's everything going for you?
Well, so speaking of comms issues, right? And your comms sound great, Ryan, as always. But speaking of comms issues, after 10 full days of trying to figure out my microphone, my headset, and my camera after transitioning from a Dell to an Apple, I got it this morning. I was ready to take this thing outside. So I feel your pain when it comes into microphones, headsets. Ryan, I hope you get it fixed quickly and don't have to endure 10 days of stress.
Well, maybe next week we'll share our office space videos of us smashing the equipment that we have. So,
Right.
but Jeremy, man, we've got a heck of a show today. I'm really interested in it. And, I have to admit, I'm not an expert in the topic that we're going to discuss today. So, God, just going to learn. It's probably going to be heartbreaking. It's probably going to be an emotional one for me. But I'm really excited to get into it. How about you?
I am, Ryan. So Nina Kallaus and we've connected probably a couple months ago, and we're bantering back and forth to just about human trafficking, and specifically how human trafficking is being used by our foreign adversaries to gain access to military facilities through the illicit activities happening outside of military bases. And I think about counterintelligence and intelligence profession. The second oldest profession is spying. When you marry that up with the oldest profession of prostitution or those lines, it's illicit meets criminal meets intelligence collection, and really it's happening right now outside of our military facilities. Soldiers, civilians, and everybody else out there that works in a military facility needs to be aware of what's happening because our adversaries are using these mechanisms and forcing people against their will and holding things over their head to make them do these activities. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce a Miss Nina Kallaus, a Miss Youngbee Dale, and a Dr. Kayla Stan. Ladies, welcome to CI Press.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm really excited to jump into the topic. So, Nina, I want to turn it over to your team. How did you come up with this? What is it you're doing? And what is the impact it's having on military facilities?
Jeremy and Ryan, thank you for having us here. So we wanted to come and talk to you guys about human trafficking and what we have observed through our analysis and through our years of working the issue around military bases. And our goal really is to bring the reality of human trafficking, which is really modern day slavery, by offering a new perspective for our military counterparts that humanizes the victims and that goes beyond the statistics and the headline. It is an extremely complex in with national security implications, especially what's going on around military bases, especially when we look at how it intersects with force protection, operational readiness, and even the ethical responsibility that we have as military members. Human trafficking is not only a violation of human rights, it directly contradicts what we believe and we hold dear through our military values and professional ethos. And we just wanted to talk about it, especially now that we're coming upon Human Trafficking Awareness Day and Awareness Month, which is January 11th. And it is something that we wanted to bring awareness to, and what a best venue to bring it in this via this podcast, and by having these two exceptional practitioners here with us, Youngbee Dale and Dr. Kayla Stan.
Yes, Nina, thank you. And appreciate that introduction. I didn't realize that January was Human Traffic Awareness Month. This is good timing because this is going to be published and it'll already be January 2026. Nina, so where do we start with something like this? Or where would you like to start about just explaining how you came to this is the passion that you want to push forward to give to the military community to prevent human trafficking?
I believe I just want to start by talking about what human trafficking is. I came upon it. I was in the military for over 10 plus years, and then I worked in the intelligence community for another 10. So I've been around security, military, and the intelligence community for over 20 years. And this is something that I came upon after I left that chapter, started working with different nonprofits. And that's how I met Youngbee and also Dr. Kayla. And it was something that, as a child of GWAT, right, we heard of human trafficking. We really didn't put two to two together. Prior to me working in the countering human trafficking space, my my experience with human trafficking was thinking of Al Shabaab, right? What they were doing with the child brides and what they were doing in Africa, or Daesh, what they were doing with females in Iraq and Syria. That was the context of human trafficking that I had, and for us in the intelligence community, it was something that it was an issue that we saw. Our goal was to counter the CTO, counter the threat, but not necessarily counter the human trafficking aspect. And then now looking at human trafficking here in the United States and how it affects our communities, and how you see once you meet a victim, you really grasp the gravity of the situation. And what we want to bring forefront is the, hey, this is not a victimless crime. This is people in our community. They are, by one reason or another, being forced into modern day slavery, and wittingly or unwittingly, we are participating into that symbiotic relationship and contributing to it. And it's very important for us to provide awareness to people, because that a lot of people are highly unaware of what's happening, and also that it has a potential of counterintelligence issues.
Well, and to be honest with you, I was unaware, and I've lived around U.S. military bases all across the globe, and outside of say like Joint Base Lewis McChord in Seattle or Tacoma area. I mean, we would have pockets, so you'd have a Korean community, a Russian community, a German community, Italian community, and it almost seems like it's a perfect cover, because I thought, oh, okay, well, service members have gone overseas, they've married into these different nationalities, and then they've brought them home and they've built their communities around the bases. And I just naturally assume like, oh, okay, well, that's just service members being service members. But if you were going to do something in criminal in nature, what a great cover for using those communities to hide within them and do illicit activities. And so this is opening my eyes. I live right down the road from Keesler Air Force Base, and there's a Korean community there and a Chinese community, and all of these different pockets just right outside the front gate. And now I have to look at it through a different lens. Like, okay, well, is this a legitimate, service members bringing their families here, and then they're building a culture and a population, just naturally, or is it something that's being used for nefarious activities?
Absolutely. And one thing that we want to state in is that for us, for the sake of this podcast, we're going to talk about illicit massage businesses around military bases and in academic institutions. And it's very important for us to explain that we don't have any ill intent or towards legitimate massage businesses. And neither are we critical or trying to pick on a particular culture or ethnicity. this information that we're going to be providing is based on analysis that we have done and also observations that it is going to help, because we understand that a legitimate business that is so important to the military community, into the community overarching, is being used to bring so much misery upon the people that are involved in it. For us, the role of professional therapy, especially in supporting health and the well-being of the community, is so big. You look at military bases, what do you see? You see a lot of people that have gotten hurt. You see a lot of wounded veterans. You see a lot of people there needing relief. And we want to make sure that the people that are providing legitimate massage therapy, they're not being also roped into what we're about to talk about. But at the same time, we'd be remiss not to bring awareness to what's truly happening with the other establishments and the people that's affecting, how it affects all of them near military bases.
Great. Let's get into it, ladies. I want to hear about your guys' product in the illicit massage businesses in and around military facilities.
Well, I mean, I can say for Ryan, you're in good luck. As of right now, there are very few in and around your particular one, your current one. So there you go. So some good news for you. I can't say the same for all of the other ones, but in your case, it's not too bad. I just checked it.
Good news. I mean, so we're doing things right. But I mean, just in our community, I mean, we have a Vietnamese population here. I think there were immigrants that came from Vietnam to New Orleans and then migrated east along the Gulf Coast. Natural, they're a fishing nationality, so it makes sense for them to live in that type of environment. But we also have Thai. You name it, from Southeast Asia, we have it here in the Gulf Coast region. And now I used to joke, and it's an off-color joke, about the nail salons, and I would say, they're taking over the country one toe at a time. And please, we're going to edit that out. But that was kind of the joke that we had. Now I look at it and I think, God, that's just horrible that I even made a joke, something like that. And so, Jeremy, I think we're going to take that out. But I feel horrible about how ignorant I am about this.
I think a lot of people are, though. I mean, coming down here was something that the difference is, particularly in the commercial sex industry, is different in Canada than in America. And so seeing some of the things here, but also seeing how much publicly available information there is about these things, is also something that was very fascinating to me, because I had never really encountered that. But all of this information, really, if you know where to look for it, is available, right? Because it's like any other community where you have people who want to talk about their interests. And so all of this information, same thing, word of mouth, right? How do you know where to find these places? Well, I've got a buddy who knows where to find these places and things like that. And so if you're searching for those things, or if you know where to look for those things, this information is very, very available, both from I want to find it, but also then from our perspective of wanting to, okay, so this information is available. How can we use that information and look for it, and then give that back into the community and be like, hey, actually, these places might be a little bit problematic. And so with that available, there really is a lot of way that you can take a look and make sure that you are going to places that do have legitimate licenses, that haven't reneged on their taxes, are not trafficking people, all of those sorts of things, aren't participating in illegal businesses. And also from the perspective of particularly military members, also making sure that that's also not what you're searching for. And I think that that's something that is also important, right? Is that this economy is enabled by people who frequent the economy, right? And so that includes people who are in a variety of different places because they need to go, or they don't need to go, but they do choose to go and look for these places. They choose to go and review. They choose to go and find where they can get that. And so from an education perspective, making sure that people who are potential intelligence leaks don't do those things is also probably a good idea. And I am not someone who's in the military community, so I don't know how that education works, but making sure that they're not frequenting these places is probably a good idea. I don't know.
Before we get into the financial aspects, which is where Youngbee will shine for sure, I just wanted to describe what is a illicit massage business. And a massage business, or an illicit massage business, consists of a business which operates as a legitimate massage business while promoting sexual and or providing sexual acts in return for compensation as an add-on. So pretty much you go in, there is a legitimate menu of choices for you to have legitimate massage businesses, massage services. And then after where you are in the middle of the massage, then they bring in the other add-on menu. The IMB owner must obtain a massage therapy license, business license, in order to operate, which is the legitimate portion of it. And it makes it different than other businesses used for the sole purpose of human trafficking, right? And now that I think about it, even saying it out loud, it kind of doesn't, because there's human trafficking in the hotel industry. There's human trafficking on the nail salon. I know Youngbee has written extensively on the hotel business. You have like Food Mart. There's so many different areas where human trafficking is happening pervasive. And another thing is that is now affecting male and women. Before, we will see like a preponderance of females being trafficked through massage businesses, where now we're starting to see also males being in there, and the males also providing the services to females. So that is something that we wanted to add on to it. Youngbee, do you want to talk about the financial aspects of illicit massage businesses and what you have seen, through your analysis?
Well, I mean, I guess, I can speak from my experience and studies that I've done in the US and abroad. So I think the highlight thing, that the hierarchy of the situation, now that you're really concerned about national security issues. So I want to highlight that right now, everyone's focusing on Chinese massage, not Chinese massage parlor, Chinese organized crime, or Chinese drug traffickers, or Chinese, what's the other word? Money laundering method. In fact, the FinCEN came out and say, the FinCEN report, and say like, hey, this is a money laundering method that used by Chinese. And it was like a very focused and like more of like a heightened security issue that they raised. It was like came out a few months ago. So what they're not doing at this point from the I don't know about military, but I'm assuming they are too, from the national security point, is that they're looking at all these sectors separately. So in other words, they're focusing on drug trafficking, right? So that's like, oh, this is really important, like, and we need to fight drug, right? Drug against war against drug. And then they're also focusing on elder scams. I don't know if you're familiar with the scam compound that are organized by Chinese organized criminals, right? But they're not considering the prostitution or commercial sex market as part of the risk. So if you understand the history of this organized criminals from East Asia, prostitution has always been part of organized criminal activities. So when I look through different types of cases on the globe, not just the US, there are a lot of intersection between the organized criminals that are using casinos to launder either the prostitution money or drug trafficking money or elder scam money, whatever the illicit activity they're involved in. They are engaging with the massage parlor. So when if you're interested in tackling the national security issue in conjunction to Chinese organized criminals and Chinese money laundering, you have to include the massage parlor as well. And I gave you a good example from Australia. So in Australia, this will raise your hair. In Australia, there's a huge case that came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago in relations to money laundering case with the crown casinos. And what a lot of people are not aware is that that crown casino was connected to the Chinese leader Xi Jinping's cousin, right? So Xi Jinping's cousin partner with a massage parlor owner. His name is Tom Zhu, right? So Tom Zhu and Xi Jinping's cousin Ming Chai, I think it was his name, they were working together to launder money through the crown casinos. Now, afterwards, Ming Chai fled the country, went back to China. Tom Zhu, because of all the international pressure, Tom Zhu was imprisoned by Xi Jinping. I say Xi Jinping instead of using the word president of China because definition and per definition, he doesn't meet the qualification of the president. He's a leader. He's a dictator of China. So I'm going to make it very clear to you. This is not a political statement. This is going back to the dictionary. And I want to clarify that he is not a president. He's a dictator. So this guy, so what happened to Ming Chai, who worked with the massage parlor owner? The massage parlor owner goes to jail. Ming Chai, however, is protected by obviously the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, because of his familial relationship. So to the point where there is a Wall Street Journal journalist, Wall Street Journal journalist, who this guy had wanting to investigate what happened, going after the cousins of this Xi Jinping. And what happened to this journalist, he got kicked out of China because he wanted to look deeper into the cousin, right? So that goes back to it kind of raised a red flag in terms of like how much of the massage parlor industry is utilized by these national security threat individuals, right? And that's just the one case. The other case that I know of, it's in the U.S., and this is something that nobody talks about, is that I had a conversation with a prosecutor in Pennsylvania. She won the case, but she had this case that involved the illicit massage parlor operated by Chinese individuals. This was in the middle of nowhere case. This is not some like shiny and bright and in a metropolitan area. This is the middle of nowhere, and she was saying that the prosecutor was telling me that the money that the Chinese owner was, as a young lady, Chinese owner was exchanging or like submitting to is the Chinese lady was laundering money to some in Australia and also Vancouver, Canada. So if you understand the holistic view of their market, like Vancouver, Canada, and Australia are the red flag zone for Chinese organized crime in conjunction with the national security threats. So I think that these are the things that people don't talk about, probably because like jurisdiction wise that these prosecutors cannot go after above and beyond than their own jurisdiction with the local jurisdiction. And these are the things that I have solely because I asked the question to the prosecutor. And the prosecutors are not making the connection between the local jurisdiction and whatever the threat that they see, or like misdemeanor or whatever, and to the national security threats that in conjunction with transnational organized crime supporting and facilitating the activity of Chinese communist members.
Youngbee, this is fascinating. And can you potentially give us a scope and scale of what this looks like? How much money are the Chinese organized criminal groups siphoning out of the U.S. economy and sending back to China on an annual basis, both from a United States perspective, but also globally? I mean, how much money are we actually talking about?
I don't have exact number because I know there are a lot of scales out there. So when I look at their local investigation, they're just solely focused on like a small investigation, either prosecuting money mules. Generally, they are either trafficking victims or the migrant workers who are hired for laundering money. But they never look deeper into the next layer, which they can if they know how to tackle the money laundering method used by Chinese organized criminals, especially in the real estate market. But because they're not looking deeper into it, what we find is just I don't know, $200,000 cash or $20,000 cash, and that sounds like a lot of money, but it really isn't. So when I could estimate is that per year, at least like the last case that I did is they were making about $2.3 million per brothel. So we have about like a 9,000 illicit massage parlor, give and take, with the Chinese and Koreans. But a lot of time they claim that they're Korean, but they could be Korean Chinese. In other words, they're Korean by ethnicity, but they're really Chinese, right? So including all these numbers, really like 9,000 times $2 million. That's a lot of money. But that's not a statistics that we're told, probably because like a lot of people don't want to be accused of overestimating. But I'm telling you from like the recent case that I did in Ohio, that this is huge industry. I don't know for sure how much of that money is going directly into CCP pockets. But at the same time, it's not just the massage parlor that you have to worry about. Some of these Chinese massage parlors are also involved in marijuana farm. So really, we're looking at the conglomeration, multiple illicit activities and their illicit proceeds.
Youngbee, this is fascinating. Thank you. I have one follow-up question as well. So you said the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. I want to put my case officer hat on for a minute, and I want to decrease my presence or protect the people that I'm working with, or have kind of proxy individuals that don't rise to the attention of the government. I would do it in the middle of nowhere. I'd want to get somebody recruited. Did your research show what was actually happening in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania?
So this particular case wasn't part of my research. It was more of like my conversation with the prosecutor, who at the time, I don't think she understood the magnitude of the problem. She doesn't understand the implication behind why is Australia important as much as Vancouver, Canada. So I think, what was your question again?
No, in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, in the research, were you able to identify what was really happening? What were the Chinese doing there with their illicit massage parlor?
So this particular Chinese massage parlor is really for the prostitution itself. They're selling sex for victims that are coerced into this activity. But I think what was alarming is that these middle of nowhere massage parlor is also connected to another massage parlor in a different jurisdiction in the US. And then the fact that like the money was going into not just in China, but at the other key jurisdiction, that's not something that most of the law enforcement is trained to follow, let alone they have ability to trace back. So I think that strategically speaking, I don't know for sure. I can't say that it was intentional, but at the same time, knowing what I know about how these criminals think through illicit activity, I could see how the middle of nowhere will be an advantage to accumulate the illicit proceeds.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and I've never even heard about this one time. So for the activities to be happening there, it would make sense and provide a good place to conduct this illicit activity because we're just unaware about it. Nina, you have our audience can't see this, but it will be attached when we do the post. You have a slide pulled up.
Sorry, we did
There we
this
go.
on behalf of an organization. This was like off the record to be briefed to somebody else. So I don't know if we can actually publish it, but I just think it was very important for us to show you this. And this is something that Youngbee and I worked on, is the IMB and CCP schemes. She really illuminated how the schemes operate. And earlier when we were talking about what was human trafficking. And the way that I explain human trafficking to people is like a triangle, right? You have a John, you have a, a victim, and you have a pimp, right? In this case, it's not a pimp because this is really a transaction. So you have those two and then an exchange of money. So when it comes to IMBs, it just goes deeper than that. You have the transaction with the John and the person that is providing the services, which in this case is the victim, which is somebody that was brought here through coercion, like lies from another country, and now this person is like inputted into this whole system. And this is how it ties back to foreign actors and things that we were not even like tracking. When I first started working with Youngbee, I had no idea of how much deeper it went because I was looking at the crime through the lens of like our Western, um, our Western context of it, right? I didn't know that there was like profiteers and investors involved in it. I didn't know that there was an ultimate facilitator, and that ultimate facilitator was actually tied to like another, criminal actor outside of the United States, and how that money exchanged hands, and also how there were other actors that were even outside of the whole scheme being used as kind of like money mules to bring in money to actually fit into the schemes. Something that Youngbee brought to the light was the use of casinos. That was something that was very fascinating because when you think of human trafficking and like the money laundering aspects of it, you don't necessarily think of casinos per se. And what a great way to clean the money, especially if you are a CCP member that's not allowed to bring money out of China. They all have a cap. Xi Jinping said, "Hey, we don't want your money out of the country." How are you gonna take that money and then put it towards like one of the schemes, right? It has like a dual hat purpose. You make money, but also you go and you further, the One Belt One Road in a way. So this is something that I just wanted to bring to light. And Youngbee, you can explain a little bit more if you want.
So I can give you another example. I think this will help you maybe conceptualize how this all works. So there's another case that from Colorado, and that case was dismissed. But afterwards, I looked into the network behind their shell corporation and their business models and whatnot. And literally, I saw this: the money was transferred, or the title of the property was transferred to another individual that wasn't even on the indictment. And one of the individuals that I mentioned on the network behind this massage parlor, they were running multiple massage parlors, and they're also running marijuana farm in the residential area. And that person wasn't really present every day on a day-to-day basis. He wasn't present on the massage parlor. The only thing he was responsible was to pay the utility bills. That's it. And then maybe like taxes here and there. So really, like, if you look at the surface level of how you're approaching the situation, he's really not that engaged. However, if you understand the corporate structure and network structure behind organized crime, we call them Chinese triad. Chinese triad is like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Chinese triad. These are the network of organized criminals that are from heavily present in Hong Kong and Macau, also in Taiwan. So people are looking at threats of CCP and just focusing on Beijing, China, right? That's not how it is. These are CCP facilitators, organized criminals that are members of Chinese triad, are also very heavily present and outside of United States, outside of China, including Taiwan. So sure, Taiwanese are our friend, and don't get me wrong, right? But you have to consider that some of these friends, especially in Taiwan, the Chinese triad group is recognized as a legitimate organization, as opposed to communism China. It is not recognized as a legitimate organization. However, they kind of play along in terms of how it's gonna profit CCP members, when it's gonna profit, when not. But so really, when we're from the U.S. point of view, we're concerned about this national security issue. We have to look at these two groups in China, but also in Taiwan. So going back to the case that I mentioned to you in Colorado, this guy was actually sending money to Taiwan, but he was facilitating bringing the CCP money into the United States. How? He had a travel agency, and he also had a casino host license, and he also had a real estate license. So it's the perfect combination if you understand the financial crime committed by the Chinese organized criminals moving CCP monies. This is supposed to be a red flag issue, and because there's a gap in education between what the local law enforcement understands as opposed to at the time the federal government understood, as opposed to what the national security people are seeing the trends. There's because of there was a gap between the two. Like the case didn't go anywhere. I mean, the prosecutor that I talked to, the one the attorney general's office talked to, said that she referred to the federal level, but like it never went anywhere. So I think that's another phenomenon I see that because when I'm making a connection between the importance of a national security issue and the players in the massage parlor and how they're engaging together to bring CCP money and buying these real estate asset in the United States. I see this all the time. It's not just one or two cases. I see multiple cases that I see the signs of Chinese triad activity bringing CCP proceeds into the U.S.
Well, I think it's very interesting because, one of the places that I go kind of for vacation with my family because it's such close proximity to our house is New Orleans. And I spent a lot of time in the French Quarter. And, pre-COVID, there were no massage parlors. There were very few massage parlors in general. It was really just business establishments. And then COVID hit New Orleans pretty hard, especially in the French Quarter, and a lot of businesses shut down. Coming out of COVID, what I've now noticed is that almost every street corner has a Chinese massage parlor, and they're open I think they're basically open 24 hours a day. And there's always the same scenario. There's an older gentleman that stands outside on the street with a sign of the different body parts and massage points and that sort of thing. And then he's trying to get people to visit the establishment. Now, I don't know, I've never visited one, but it's a trend that I've seen just over the last, 1 to 2 years after, post-COVID. And now I'm taking a look at it through a different light, because what a perfect storm, right? I mean, New Orleans, the French Quarter is known for its debauchery. It's a great place to set up these types of businesses and run front companies. And then it has close proximities to the casinos, both in Louisiana, but along the Gulf Coast. And so now and a community that could potentially support it. So, wow, it's that close to home for me.
It's not just there, though. So this is something that, for particularly the massage businesses, we've seen more broadly. So in my academic conferences, I like to say that it's the fastest growing industry. It's not quite, but it's up there with things like finance and accounting. In the last 10 years, it's had 110% increase, and that's clear across the nation. So pretty much there's a handful of counties where you've seen a reduction in the illicit massage business industry, but pretty much everywhere else you've seen an increase. That includes Louisiana, that includes Texas, Florida, California. It's clear across the board. And so it's not just in New Orleans that you're seeing that. And you're seeing that both in populated places like New Orleans, but you're also seeing it in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, as well. So it really is kind of an expansive industry. I think that there's kind of like a perfect storm attached to that. If you look at how the industry has changed, you did see COVID drop how fast these businesses were opening, but then you saw this rebound after that you saw more generally in the economy writ large, but you saw kind of this bump post COVID, and then it kind of equalized out, and then you've seen a spike more recently as well. So it's something that has been continuing to happen in a lot of different places. So New Orleans being one of them, but not exclusively.
Dr. Sam, why the growth?
I mean, that's a good question. I have suspicions. So some of the growth that you really saw growth in kind of 2018. And then you saw it crash in 2020, rebound in 2021. I think that it kind of ties into other things. If you've been around, I'm sure that you've heard about things like the loneliness epidemic. You've heard how terrible things like the dating market is, how transactional things are. And so with increases in kind of transactional relationships more broadly and loneliness, I think that there's increased demand. Clearly, on any sort of economy, you have to have demand of some variety. And so I suspect that probably has something to do with it. It's also easier than ever really to be able to market for industries, right? So if you look over the past 10 years, everything's switched online. So if you have a business, even an illicit one, as I said earlier, is like you can find this information. It's not hard, right? And so ease of access more generally to information, I think makes it easier to market these sorts of businesses. You also have seen kind of a trend towards, the destigmatization of the commercial sex industry more broadly, which I don't think is a bad thing for like voluntary ones. That's neither here nor there. But it is something that if you do have larger destigmatization of those things, then, I mean, if you are someone who frequents it, how do you know as a person coming in off the street whether people are there voluntarily or not? It's like, I don't know. So it's like you have a whole variety of things that I think are playing into it. I'm sure that there are other things on the larger financial aspect that Youngbee knows about. Those are just sort of my theories, none of which I think I can prove, but I think that there's a lot of different things. Also, I mean, the other part of this is in terms of the ranking of how people view this crime, right? This kind of heads towards not quite scofflaw, but pretty much. It's like we all probably know a place or have seen a place that we're like, yeah, maybe. But if you pit that up against, hey, there's a murderer down the street or there's gun violence 2 blocks down, it's like, what's the ranking of this one? And so if things become towards the end of like scofflaw, then it really makes it hard to enforce it. So then you also have this kind of interplay between what's the payoff versus not, right? It reminds me a little bit of New Orleans, where people put casinos where Katrina flooded, right? It was like, yeah, if I get hit once every 2 decades and have to completely rebuild something, it doesn't change the multi-millions of dollars that I've acquired in the meantime. And so there's kind of these cost-benefit trade-offs from an economic perspective, and this is a lucrative business. So I think that there's a lot of things that are a perfect storm for this, in my mind.
I will say that one of the perfect storms that we don't nearly talk about is like how readily available we have victims via the illegal immigration exodus that we saw in the last like 5 years. I mean, it became very easy for victims to be able to come to the United States, like obtain, some sort of like status here in the United States, and then be participant in that economy. I can tell you that I did some analysis in the Florida Panhandle, and we had out of 1,229 massage businesses that we saw register, 1,075% of them, no, 1,075, which constitute 87% of them, were erotic in nature. And that was something that was being self-reported by people patronizing those establishments. So that goes to tell you that only 12% of the massage businesses that were registered were deemed non-erotic by people that attended it. So it goes back to the economy, right? And Youngbee and I worked in some cases in which we mapped out that the money laundering that was happening there. And I believe we had a batch of cases that was like, what, $12 million? That was the one that we found at Youngbee?
At least the one case was 5 million. I can't remember. The other one maybe 12 million. I can't remember exact number.
But we have mapped out like this establishment, they're cash cows. Because like we showed you earlier, it's not only that illicit massage business, right? Like the girls are there and like we show you how they do it. They bring them in, it's coercion. I mean, the median age of this poor women that come through they're either debt bondage, meaning that they owe money. There's some sort of like cultural duress that they have to like go through back in their countries, right? Dad owes money, like somebody needs money of some sort. They come in through illicit means. They anchor them here. A lot of them don't even know where they live. It is the saddest thing when you go and you see a raid of this lady's being removed, right? and and that's the true human aspect of it. You are talking about a person that is a mother, that is a daughter to somebody that's being forced to provide sexual commercial activities for 15 hours a day. That is the fact of it. And in the state of Florida, I mean, out of 1,229, 1,075 of them we're providing some sort of service. That is a staggering in just a microcosm of what we're seeing. And then when we look at how those establishments are also located outside of military bases, this is where it really start hitting home, right? We're talking about the CI nexus, right? Like now that we are shifting and refocusing the national security strategy towards more of a home front, we need to start rethinking about like where the vulnerabilities, like the soft targets that we are so used to and accustomed to with GWAD, how is that going to change, and what is it that we're going to do to counter it? We have some establishments that are 7 minutes away from the main base. Like the main base front gate, you drive 7 minutes and you hit an establishment that we have confirmed via open source analysis that provides full-blown services. We know because we've seen them pop up in subreddits and other locations that they do introduce cameras in there. Right? Is it pervasive? No. But like we're talking about what is the possibility, and now that we're having to realign the strategy, right? That we're not countering our intelligence apparatus overseas. How can we now get to our soldiers, sailors, and Marines and everybody else here in the home front? Collection of sensitive personal and behavior information. Like right now, there's a law in Florida, it's HB 179. And that law was great. Like we all wanted it. House Bill 178. And we wanted that law because it provided all of these different safeguards and guardrails for like the cops and everybody else to go in and hit some of this establishment. But one thing that it did, and I was just reading it just today, and it just kind of like dawned on me about the CI Nexus, is that it forces this establishment now, it mandates a bylaw for them to actually collect your PII. So like if I'm a perfect collection platform, right? And if I am being coerced to provide information back to whoever is my ultimate facilitator, or like if I want to engage in a scheme, I am now by law mandated to have the PI of the people that are going over there. That is just like one step away from having a camera, and like just imagine the repercussions of it. I know that through working with Youngbee, we even found in some of the cases in which service members with active security clearance were being married to some of the people that were involved in some of the schemes, right? So what is OPM doing to actually go and look at the background of those service members that are married to those foreign nationals that might have, a nexus to it? Because I mean, we found that through, we are civilians. We do not have, I'm no longer intertwined in the intelligence community like I used to. So this is something that was found through just open source analysis. How many of those cases are out there and they're targeting our service members? And it's not only like targeting them through marriage, right? But also through other schemes as well.
So
That's incredible. Oh, go ahead, Youngbee.
if I can add two more things when it comes to national security threats. The first thing I want to tell you is that there was actual case that the massage parlor owner operating multiple massage parlors was actually attempted multiple times to enter into the White House meeting. She was bringing a lot of people from a high official in the Chinese Communism Party, and then she was selling this as a product, as like, okay, so you get a connection to the U.S. government, and then you get to travel around, and then you get to gamble, and potentially and probably is the massage parlor is part of the package. And she was bringing multiple CCP members into the U.S. to meet with the U.S. officials. So that's the one threat that I see as a connection between illicit massage parlor industry as opposed to the national security threat. The other thing that people are not aware is that unlike the Western women who are willingly engaged in prostitution, the prostitution industry in the East Asia have always been bread and butter of organized criminals. So suppose that a person is engaging in this activity, like let's say migrant workers who are entering into this activity for whatever reason, right? Does not mean that her activity is not going to profit organized criminals who are also working with very well connected with the high officials members in Taiwan and also CCP. So I think that's the biggest misconception. I think the Westerners miss out. I think they look at the massage parlor, illicit massage parlor operating by Chinese or Koreans. They think that it's just another, I don't know, business that just kind of would just want to here to make money. Yeah, sure, I can see that possibility from the Western point of view. However, from the East Asian point of view, prostitution, commercial sex industries has always been part of organized criminals. So for us to look at it on the same level is we're making a great mistake, that we're actually funding and supporting and helping the organized criminals who also are very well connected to high official and Chinese Communism Party.
I think this is eye-opening, and I do remember a high-level, very significant case that came out of Florida probably 5 to 10 years ago that involved the owner of an NFL football team. And it makes me wonder, when we talk about criminal entities using coercion to bring the ladies in and to bring the sex workers in, why wouldn't they naturally use coercion to impact the Johns, the clients of these establishments? Now, Kayla, you brought up a really interesting note, and there's trends of where these establishments are kind of based out of. And I was wondering if you could shed a little bit more light on that.
Sure. I mean, so generally speaking, you're going to get hotspots in population centers. That's just how things work. But if you look at, proportionally speaking, to where you have normal businesses, so normal massage businesses, you have a lot of these out in California. So California definitely has a higher than average proportion of illegal businesses. You have kind of all along the Gulf Coast where you have higher proportions of that. So running all the way through Texas, all the way to Florida. And then you do have kind of this central bit that is running kind of, think middle of Texas north and over towards the east. You have very little happening over in kind of the Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota range there. But headed kind of in more towards the eastern side of that, you have seen kind of this increase in that. And then you obviously have like hotspots in Florida and like Chicago and the main cities and things like that. But that's for kind of both of these things. There's higher people demand for everything, so you just have higher of both. So those are some of the ones that you kind of see in terms of the Gulf Coast, that central region, and California being kind of the biggest ones from my perspective anyways, based on what we've kind of seen. And then in terms of the bases, we have, you have a lot of things that are very, very close. So you have probably, I don't know, about a quarter of the bases, let's go with, that have something that's right outside their gate. And then as you kind of go to a couple of blocks away, you're starting to see like 50, 60, 70% of these bases having a lot. And then you also have differences for bases and what ones have large amounts of these businesses around them, depending on what type of services those bases have. So you have a high amount of around headquarters services. Obviously, that makes a lot of sense. Medical ones, so anything where there's medical services, deployment ones, also have kind of this higher than average. And another one that had kind of higher than average were these joint force bases as well. And so those ones have higher than average, and that's in comparison to like the like supply ones and things like that, or like the training ranges. Those ones don't have nearly as many around them. But you kind of have this variety depending on what's around them. Also, just as a secondary, it's kind of related. It's an interesting thing that I found for this is that ones around military bases actually cost less, which I found interesting. So they were statistically cheaper in terms of how much their services were compared to average. So if you have one outside of places not near military bases, they're a little bit more expensive. And so that could just be a coincidence, but it also is something that I found interesting as a potential recruitment into sort of thing. Yeah.
I think that's fascinating right there. You just said the facilities outside military bases are less. Boy, I want to put my counterintelligence hat on real quick, if I may, ladies, because what I'm thinking is, you know what, their number one priority at those facilities must be to collect against the service members. I recall driving around Fort Bragg when I was stationed there a lot of years ago, and now looking back as we're talking, all these facilities are all around. I cannot believe it. And it brings me to like what happened to Lone Tree, the young Marine who was stationed in Moscow, who met Uncle Sasha. I can't imagine how much this is really happening at these facilities where it's cheap to go in, people are lonely, it's an easy means, and they're paying to get it, and all of a sudden they're meeting Uncle Z, Uncle Sasha, Uncle Ali, somebody who is much more nefarious in these sophisticated networks. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's an important thing. As a different kind of open one, you do also have service members who are searching for this. One of the data sets that has been put out there is also who's searching on these forums for things. And I sporadically have data across this one. It's not the easiest to get full access to, but sporadically I've got. And even within the sporadic that I had, there's 46 bases that have searches onto these forums specifically for massage businesses that are coming out of those. And so it's not something that is like, oh, it's just this one base over here. It's like, it is something that it seems like people on bases are searching for. And so I think that that's something like because they're cheaper, because it's accessible, because they're searching for it, is like, that's something that, you know, needs to be at least brought into awareness for the people who are, you know, searching for those things, because it could be potentially very problematic for them.
When there's something in the Pentagon, it's called the Pentagon Pizza Index. And so whenever you see a spike of pizzas being delivered to the Pentagon, now you know that, hey, there's some high level planning going on. Their war is imminent, you know, and that sort of thing. And I mean, what a great way to get insight into indicators and warning. You know, if you have a hospital unit that, now you're starting to see them spin up and there's activity and they're deploying to a thing. Hospital units go where war is at, because there's going to be a higher level of casualty. There's going to be a need for that type of unit to go out. And I don't know that a lot of people put two and two together, but hospitals usually go to the high conflict zones. And what a great way to kind of get a pulse of what the military is doing is when hospitals move.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ryan. I mean, I was in the Pentagon, and you see that spike of pizzas. You can look back at what happened around 9/11. All of a sudden, the pizza industry spiked. We were probably in the wrong business back then. But ladies, let me ask you this, right? I'm oblivious to all this. I'm very naive. What are some common indicators that maybe military members or individuals stationed at military facilities will see at some of these establishments to discern between in Florida, 87% exotic massage versus just like, hey, I'm sore, I just need to fix my muscles?
I will say watch out for establishments that are open way longer than it should, right? If they take you in like right at the cusp of like 9 o'clock, there's definitely something nefarious going on. You will see key indicators like when you go in there, you see the ladies are not dressed appropriate attire. We have been to locations in which they have like the full getup. There is not. It doesn't look like it's a legitimate establishment. So very scantily clad. You have other things such as like lubricants just laying around, and just this is a lot of like if you feel off, is 90% of the times it's gonna be off. They are going to weigh into you deep into the massage to proposition you. And what I will just say is to any service member that has happened, like go and report it, right? Because the problem is that these ladies are being forced to do that, right? So, and for you, as a matter of ethics and as a matter of like, hey, like we need to bring awareness to what's happening. Like, don't be ashamed. Go and report it to your force pro, and that way they can work with the locals and then really go and find out what's going on, because you don't know if you're saving somebody's life by doing that.
I'll also say there is some research out there, not my own, this is other people's, if in terms of the outside of the buildings, if it looks like a sign could be easily changed, then that is one of the indicators as well. So if you have, and you'll see them sometimes where one looks like it is pretty well on there, and then you could just flip out a word on the front end of it. That's something that does happen, where one gets shut down, owner changes, new one pops up under a slightly different name. So instead of like, I don't know, Golden Feet, it's like something else. It is something that also is something to keep in mind. Obviously, that's not the only thing. But if you're looking for a kind of a quick and dirty, maybe take a double check of, that's one thing as well.
One thing I just realized too is that like if you go and read the reviews, you see that they roll Rolodex through girls a lot. Or like the same girl has like a different name in all of the reviews. So that's also a telltale sign. And they do that because there's two names. It's like the one that the client knows, and then the one their actual like given name. Also watch out for like people now posting their licensure. By every state, this is not only the state of Florida, but they're supposed to have their licensure in there, and each one of those girls are supposed to be licensed. I feel like they, just like anything else, the adversary is always like 2 steps ahead of everything. So they have gotten very good at like trying to comply to these laws, because now, especially in the state of Florida, it has made it easier for the locals to actually go, and even for the sanitation department to go and do like no notice inspections, which it's like we close down one, but then like 3 more pop up because they cycle them around. I would like to say that, for the force protection mitigation measure, like what I hope that through this podcast, that we able to like have a conversation about like the threat awareness briefing for service member, and how that should be being brought to the forefront, especially during like the installation threat working group. The honor of going to the Hereford Field one a couple of years back and talk to the Force Pro folk, and really like bring in a little bit of nuance to what's happening outside of that military base. But I would really like to see that across the board, and like having like an actual like legitimate conversation with all of the service member and their families about the threat that is there, and also like ways to help. So that is something that we hope happens through this.
I think, I remember back to my time whenever I served in Korea, and you would go to a company, let's just say it's a purse company, and, and they have every name brand purse in the front of the store. But then once you got in there, they would always invite you to go behind the door, to a closet or step downstairs. And that's where they had all of the black market purses and that sort of thing. And I just wonder if these establishments inside the United States have kind of the same setup. You go in, it's a front, it looks like a legitimate business, but then there's this opportunity behind the door, and that's where they offer the illegal services. And then I was also thinking, we have the ability to blacklist organizations on military bases and say, hey, okay, these are off limits because we think, either they present a harm to service members, or they're, doing human trafficking or whatever else. But with the ability for them to change signage so quickly or shut down and pop up in a different location, you're almost playing whack-a-mole. And that approach may not be an appropriate one for base commanders or, force pro people. So we have to somehow get ahead of this from a counterintelligence standpoint and talk actually to the service member and make an impact there.
I can tell you that I have some experience on the blacked out establishment list situation, and it's a double-edged weapon, unfortunately. And the reason for that is because we're trying to balance, like civil liberties of this, business units. They are in the community, they are now within the military purview, with, some alleged criminality, right? And then what you encounter is that, unlike, your sleazy nightclub that, people are doing cocaine in, right? Which is kind of like easy to do that. Some of this establishment, they're getting really good at like, okay, like we are in hot water. So like, let's like lay low, right? So the issue with the illicit massage business and the blacked out establishment list is that you have to go and you have to alert the business that they know that we know that they're doing something wrong. So by you doing that already, you are stifling into quite possibly like a local law enforcement like operation or like some Fed operation that you might not be privy to. So on top of that, like you said, it's like with a walk-more mentality, it's to them it's all about the economy of effort and money. Like, what is going to be the easiest way for me to get out of this issue? Just leave town, right? So what happens is that the girls get transferred to some other hellhole location. So like now we went and blew an operation that belonged to somebody else outside of our jurisdiction because we wanted to do that. So I feel that based upon my experience, I believe that the best course for us is really awareness. It's like that is the only effective way in like trying to bring a face to the issue, and that face is like the human toll that it takes by people going and doing those actions against a victim. That this is not you just going over there and you getting some instant sexual gratification from somebody that is nameless to you. This is a woman, a human being that was brought here through coercive measures, and then now you are pretty much participating into this economy where you're part of the problem, right? And it's like it's like demand reduction through actual awareness, and that's really what we want the service member and everybody to understand, that like you're hurting these people by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, well said, Nina. Hey, ladies, we are coming up on time. I would like to give everybody a kind of the stage one more time to pass any words of wisdom in imparting knowledge. Youngbee, you had your hand up.
Well, I would just say, like, per awareness, and Nina did a great job there talking about, like, what to look for and, on a surface level. But as a military member, a military officer, and now that the Chinese organized crime and their national security threat is going up, I do think it's really important to understand their money laundering patterns that are used not just in massage parlor, but also in other parts of the drug trafficking or the even scam compound. This is not hard to find as long as you understand the markers of their financial crime activity, because their financial crime method has never been changed since, God knows. I mean, like, I look at the literature from, early on and from, I don't know, like, prior to 2009, 1990s, to talk about the markers that their money laundering method and at-risk businesses they like to use from Macau, China, is the same thing they're using in UK, same thing they're using in Chinatown and Flushing, New York, and any other places around the globe. It's not hard. It's just a matter of looking at the criminal activity from the criminal's lens as opposed to what we like to see in our own assumptions.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Dr. Stan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that playing whack-a-mole is probably the best analogy, and kind of what Youngbee has been saying as well is that this is far more pervasive and far more interconnected than I think a lot of people truly realize. And it's not just one mom and pop shop. It's not just one girl. These are systems that have been in place for a while. They're growing. They're not going away. And so really understanding it as this kind of system and network that does have real financial implications and real human implications. And then personally for military members, potentially real problems for them, depending on where they end up going. I think that this is something to kind of really understand, that this is part of a larger system. It's not just this one-off that I did one time on one mistake, right? It's part of a larger system.
Yeah, it's a sophisticated network of sounds like, right? Thank you. And Nina, please.
I just wanted, really reach out to the leaders and to everybody in the service to like really be on the lookout for this kind of activities and like really understand that, for every action, there's a reaction and you're participating on it, whether you like it or not. And, knowledge is power. So my hope is that our Force Pro like actually integrate training onto spotting and assessing and really like educating the forces on this demand reduction. And we already have a lot of literature. There's a lot of things the people can reach us, so we can talk to them about it. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like when we came to this podcast is because of the victims, right? Like, what better way to like help the victims during the National Human Trafficking Awareness Day and month than bringing awareness that, hey, this is happening. It is something that is going to continue to progress, right? Especially now with like AI and everything else. But it is something that we still have a chance to do something about it. And I just hope that our military leaders actually listen to this and like really take it seriously and hopefully put it as a EEI somewhere in the CI strategy. Something that can convert into, an actual collection requirement. It can be actionable or something for them to actually, collaborate with the feds on.
No, Nina, thank you. You mentioned something I want to follow up so our listeners out there. So any of our listeners wanted to hear more or pick any of your ladies' brains on this particular topic, how can they reach you?
They can reach me through LinkedIn, Nina Kallaus.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I've also got my university email, kayla.stan@usm.edu. Perfectly fine.
I'm on LinkedIn and I have a website. My email address is dale@dale-consulting.com.
Great. Thank you, ladies.
I feel like I got put in the spot now. I have to give you an email.
It's okay. LinkedIn's perfectly fine.
Okay, fine. LinkedIn it is.
Well, ladies, thank you for joining us this afternoon. There's clearly a threat out here, and it's by a sophisticated network of individuals that are leveraging criminal practices likely to collect information against military facilities. So there is a threat. There's a vulnerability. A lot of people don't understand this. They're not educated. Nobody's aware of what's happening. And I applaud you ladies for bringing this to light and bringing the education and the awareness, not just in January, but you're constantly doing that, and truly do appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and bringing this crisis to light.
And I just say one more thing. Donate to your local, your local service providers, especially in support human trafficking victims. So I'm totally going to pitch in one of my organizations. So please donate safeinthepanhandle.com. They do a lot of great services for victims in the Northwest Florida Panhandle. We have a lot of military bases out there, and they just opened up an emergency receiving center that provides, victims of human trafficking with immediate help and assistance. So that will be for the Christmas, as you want to do something good, go donate.
Jeremy, so we've got to wrap it up, unfortunately. I mean, we're at time, but there are episodes of CI Press, and then there are like episodes of CI Press. And historically, we've taken a look at these non-official establishments that are collecting on American service members, having an impact on national security. I know historically we've taken a look at the Russian Orthodox Church and the Confucius Institutes and some of the student groups that we see from the Big Four throughout the United States. And, every time one of these bubbles up, it's just eye-opening and it's impactful, especially from a counterintelligence and national security standpoint. But this one, I mean, the victims really, it breaks my heart. And again, I see it daily, along the Gulf Coast. So thank you so much, ladies, for raising this awareness, for, coming on and doing and talking about the work that you're doing. We applaud your efforts, and man, it's heartbreaking. It's scary. It's terrifying, and something that we're so glad to be able to highlight on our podcast. Jeremy, what do you think?
Yeah, everything you just said, it's disheartening, and I'm glad there's people fighting for the victims out there, and that's what it's all about. If you see something, report it. Don't be embarrassed about it. If you were actually a paying John, if you will, to use Nina's term, go ahead and report it. Get it shut down. It needs to be taken care of. To our audience out there, as always, thanks for giving us a listen. Check out our website, www.ixnsolutions.com. We'll have information about our Printify swag that we have. I've got a No Spy shirt on today. Our Discord and dispatch offerings are on there as well. So again, Ryan, appreciate it. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, and we'll end this one this is one of those cases where we really need your help with this. So if you come in contact with a threat or a risk, especially something involving human trafficking, recognize it for what it is, react to it properly, and then report it to somebody, to some security professional, so that we can take action on it. God, I'm gonna go need to take a break after this one, but until next time, thank you very much.